Tina Turner, Paul McCartney, Kylie Minogue, Boy George, Queen, Eric Clapton, Ray Charles, Burt Bacharach, Van Morrison, Paul Carrack, Mick Hucknall, Swing Out System.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't appreciate what's going on in the background. They just see the big thing that is plastered everywhere, but there's all the other stuff that's happening in the background.
And I've practiced under bridges, I've practiced in broom cupboards, motorway car parks, toilets.
So picture yourself playing to a stadium full of screaming fans as you're performing alongside some legendary artist. I mean, what does that even feel like? And more importantly, what's going on inside your mind as you prepare for a massive gig like that? Well, today you're in luck because I want to share with you a fantastic conversation I had with an amazing sax player called Snake Davis. He's one of the UK legendary sort of pop saxophone players. You'll know he's playing from huge hits like A Million Love Songs by Take That and the song Jubel by Klinganda. And over the last few years, he's been performing with this immense Japanese star called Eikichi Yazawa, where they perform to literally tens and tens of thousands of people every single night. So in this conversation, we really dig into what's going inside Snake's mind as he prepares to go on stage and as he prepares his playing for these really high pressure gigs. There's so much great information in here. I know you're absolutely going to love it. So before we get stuck in though, if you're new to the podcast and you're not already subscribed, then please do click that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube if you're watching us. We've done a bunch of really great episodes already, and there's so many more in the pipeline that are coming out over the coming months. So I don't want you to miss any of them. Click subscribe and then you'll be notified about the episodes as they come up. And also, super quick, this podcast is made possible by our thousands of students that learn with us over at saxschoolonline.com. So if you're ready to improve your skills, whether you're looking for like advanced jazz or blues or even beginner skills, or even if you're interested in different styles like classical or DJ sax, it's all for you inside Sax School Online. And there's a 14-day trial where you can go and check it out. The 14-day trial is brilliant because you can try out all the lessons, but you can also get help from our amazing team of tutors and even attend live stream sessions that we're running all the time. So that's over at saxschoolonline.com. Go check out the 14-day trial. We'd love to help you get your playing on track. Okay, let's dig into this amazing conversation with Snake Davis. So Snake, I imagine you've done so many big gigs over the years, but I'm curious to know whether the Eikichi Yazawa gig is a different experience. What's it like?
It's definitely a different experience. It's crazy, you know, and I have done other big shows with Eurythmics, I suppose would be the biggest one, but his show it's just like no other. And I've done him, you know, on and off for 20, 25 years now, but it's
wow,
hard to get
long.
across. Yeah, a long time, you know, it's hard to get across to Western folks how big he is, because he's pretty much unheard of outside Japan, but he's a megastar, you know. He does, as you know, we play to up to 70, 80,000 people some nights, and you know, Japan's most famous venue, the Budokan in Tokyo, he's done it 160 times. We do it 5 times in a row before Christmas. And, you know, his face has been on a set of postage stamps. He does the beer ads. He's a movie star. It's a massive thing, you know. There's 14 artics on the road and 60 crew traveling in a big old coach and another 100 local crew. Runways going out.
Wow.
Into the audience. It's a massive thing, you know. And so it's different from other things, partly because of the scale of it and partly because it's so Japanese, you know, and it's very much, it's staff, you know, it's a hierarchy, it's planned to the nth degree. You know, we Westerners are hired in because we play with sort of heart and passion and instinctively, but then, you know, we have to conform to some degree and know exactly the spot that we're to hit for that solo.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's different in that it's the scale, and it's different in that it's the massive organization, and also different in that it's the Japaneseness of it. So is that like the level of detail and specificity about everything?
It's very much that, you know, things are planned to the nth degree of exactly where I'm to stand one thing which makes it very different is he likes to use me really sparingly. So I'm like the secret weapon, out of 24 songs in the set, I'll play on 6 or 7. And first of all, I found that I just did my head in, and after the first 2, I turned him down a couple of years running. I couldn't. I'm in the wings, I'm pent up with frustration. I want to be out there playing, but I learned to deal with that, as well.
Maybe that's something we can dig into. Actually, I'm curious. That's an interesting sort of inner game of that scale of performing, which I don't know anything about. So yeah, I'm really curious to find out more about that. For people who don't know about you, Snake, because you're a legend in the this world that the musicians I know around here, but people may not know about you. You mentioned about the Eurythmics that you've done before. Can you just give us a quick rundown of the other big acts you've played with? Because a lot of people have heard you. That's the thing. I think most people don't realize they've heard you, but they may not know who you are.
Yeah, that's the session musicians lot, isn't it? So Lisa Stansfield was the first big artist I worked with, world tours, my first Top of the Pops and everything and all that. Much more recently, Klingander and Fowl, a lot of people are doing that house sax and DJ thing now, and many of them come to me and say, "Oh, thank you, you gave me a whole career with that Dubel tune." And then there's M People, that was like a 25-year day job almost, M People, and then had a small Take That. I did that first album. A Million Love Songs is one of my well-known solos, I guess. More recently, Ollie Murs did his last album. We did Shania Twain's last single. And then, there's either live or on tour. There's Tina Turner, Paul McCartney, Kylie Minogue, Boy George, Queen, Eric Clapton, Ray Charles, Burt Bacharach, Van Morrison, Paul Carrack, Mick Hucknall, Swing Out Sister. The list goes on. Some of them, I spent years with, but then some of them, it was just one tune in the studio, or James Brown, I forgot him, but that's just one piece on a live TV. Smokey Robinson, the same. So some of them was like 3 minutes, and some of them was like 25 years.
Wow, that's so crazy. And I bet at the start of some of these projects, would I be right in guessing you didn't know how long that was going to be? I mean, is that the way it works?
Exactly. That's so true, Nigel. And, we have a joke, me and some of the horn players I work with, we finish the session, and even if it's an artist we've never heard of and we never think, we'll say, "Thanks a lot, great to meet you, see you on the tour." And with them people, the first time I met them in the studio was doing Moving On Up, and I had no idea that was going to lead to 25 years of work, and of course, I mentioned all the big artists because you asked me, but for every big one, there's 50 small ones and little sessions that absolutely lead nowhere. And sessions which are just not big time, that they're like the production line of working on people's karaoke tracks or whatever. The scene. Yeah. But some of your listeners may not realize that the life of the career of a session man is quite mysterious, I think,
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't appreciate what's going on in the background. They just see the big thing that is plastered everywhere, but there's all the other stuff that's happening in the background. Also, just reminds me while we're talking that Jubel track, I'd love to break down the process of how you recorded that. It's not, I know we're getting off topic today, but we've definitely got to have that conversation, because that, amongst our sax school members, is a really popular track. Yeah. And I'd be curious to have a conversation with you about the way you sort of, how that recording project actually worked, and then your thinking behind that. So that's definitely something we've got to dig into. And for anybody who's listening to, Snake, you have done a fantastic masterclass for us already inside Sax School about creating emotion in your playing, which is something I think that you've got that, man. You are the template that we need to be looking at for that sort of thing. Yeah, so definitely, if you haven't yet, if you're a member and you're not checked that out, definitely go check it out. And if you're not a member, grab the 14-day trial, because even just that masterclass will make it worthwhile.
Yeah, that was a fun masterclass.
It was fun, and people will go back to that over and over and over. Very, very popular.
Oh, good.
So, okay, so for anybody who hasn't sort of done performing on that scale, where you're on a really big stage, can you sort of give us a quick rundown of what it's like mentally, that whole thing about because you alluded to it before, where sometimes you're only playing for 6 of the 24 tracks for the night. So what's going on in your mind as you sort of prepare for a gig like that?
Well, it's they're big shows and it's a big subject, and it's definitely like a very different dynamic from going to do a jazz gig or going to do a theatre with my own band or something. And it kind of sounds like stating the obvious, but it's the sheer size, that not only in the audience, but as I said, the production, and just to kind of emphasize again and let your listeners know the scale of it. On a Tokyo Dome, for one track, he brought on 100 sax players just for one tune.
Wow.
Sometimes he'll roar onto stage on a Harley Davidson. On one occasion he did a couple of circuits of the stadium in a vintage American car before he came onto stage.
Wow.
It's so, on the bigger shows, sometimes there'll be a full orchestra that he brings in for the larger shows, sometimes a choir, guest musicians, definitely dancers. And my feeling is, as a player, that you have to rise to that occasion. Literally, you have to kind of make yourself bigger. There's an element of acting involved. You're like half musician, half actor. You have to make your body movements bigger. You have to remember that subtle, quiet, little delicate things may not be appropriate. They may get lost, in a massive stadium. And the same with the energy. I always say to even the school choir up the road that I take on a Thursday morning, I say, right, when you put it out, but face forward, your energy goes out. You've got to reach the slightly deaf granny in the corner there. Well, you magnify that by 1,000 times. You get 80,000 people. You want to reach every single one of them with every note you play. It's a different mindset. You just make it bigger. It's like you rise and as Superman, you pop out the buttons on your Clark Kent.
Yeah. Can I ask you? You mentioned that it's more like as much being an actor or a performer as being a musician. So when you're playing a larger scale or a gig like that to lots and lots of people, there's so many other moving parts going on, and you already mentioned about how you even need to know where they tell you where to stand, and everything is very organized. So in terms of your playing, because I'm presuming there's some lines that you're playing and there's also some solo sections. So do you approach your solos in the same way, whereby they are more defined and you have a better, clearer structure to what you're going to do? Or is it really that you're just, improvising as you're going and every night's different?
Yeah, that's a great question. On the Japanese thing specifically, for many of the pieces I'm required to play the solo, exactly, note for note, whether it was mine or somebody else's. In the situation where I've got more freedom, whereas if it was one of my own gigs or a theatre with Swing Out Sister or Lisa Stansfield at home, I would just say, right, happy days, this is what I love, I'll shut my eyes and go for it. But even then, on a big gig like that with a precious artist like that, I will at least have like a real solid starting line in my mind memorized, and perhaps a real shape of how I want to take it. I want it to peak on bar 9, and then kind of come out, and then maybe I'll have my last phrase fixed as well. So, and that's because I don't want to take quite as many risks as I would take on the smaller gigs.
Yeah,
down the Pizza Express or something,
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And it makes sense too, because, there's a lot more at stake. I mean, and also, I suppose, particularly on the Eikichi Yazawa gigs, that people, like you say, are expecting a certain thing. They're expecting to hear that solo. It's a bit like, I don't know, if you went and saw a band playing Careless Whisper, they expect you to play the Careless Whisper line. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that's your role. That's your role as a player, I suppose.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah, really, really interesting. Okay, so there's obviously lots of preparation that has to go in for that. I'm guessing you need, clearly, you've got your skills together, but you also know what you need to do and what's expected of you. So what about if we take a step back then and we talk about what's actually going on inside your mind? Because I think I think that mental preparation and the sort of inner game of what's happening as a musician is a really interesting thing for us to learn about. You've been doing it a long time, so I don't know if you still think about this stuff, but can you give us a bit of an insight into what's going on mentally for you?
For sure. Well, and this is a huge subject, not only for oneself, but the likes of us who are sort of paying it back to other musicians now through your school, through my academy. It crops up all the time, Nigel. I'm sure it's the same for you. And I've always thought about it anyway. I do get nervous, I do get anxious, but luckily I've never suffered from those real sickening, horrible nerves where you want to throw up and you run into the toilet and you're saying, I can't go on. I never get that bad, but I work with people that do, and it's very common. So an absolutely massive topic. It's just slightly different. The kinds of nerves you get on these really big shows are different from those nerves that you get when you're going to perform for the primary school kids or when you're going to perform in a jazz club.
Well, so I guess the first point there is really interesting, is that everyone gets nervous to some degree. There's some level of anxiety that nearly everybody experiences, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so do you have a process that you use? Because everyone has it, but maybe they feel it in different ways, or the body reacts to it in different ways, or they've got different coping mechanisms for it.
Sure.
If we take the baseline that everyone's got it, which I know when we talk to our students about this at Sax School, because you're exactly right, this topic comes up all the time, particularly because we have got thousands of adults who are starting their journey of learning saxophone later on in life. And it's kind of a weird thing, I think, when you're an adult and maybe you've already been successful in your career, doing whatever you've done, be it a doctor or a dentist or a mechanic or whatever, and then you do this new thing and you've got that confidence in what you've done before, but then you're actually way out of your comfort zone when you try and do this new thing, which is standing up and playing in front of people. And it's quite overwhelming because I don't normally have this sort of feeling. How do I deal with it? So I think one of the important things to understand is the sort of the mental process that goes on how you deal with this anxiety that everybody's got. So do you, I mean, maybe different for you, like I said, you've been doing it for a long time, but do you have things that you go through in terms of your sort of structure of your day as you prepare for a big show like that?
Yeah, definitely. And the physical and mental side of what we do, I'm sure you'll agree, Nigel, is intrinsically linked. So, the immediate things from the morning of a show day, whether it's a big show or a small day, I am focusing on that show. And ideally, I don't have too much to sidetrack me, but life is not ideal. So I may be traveling, I may be sort of trapped in a hotel room. If it's the UK, I have a long drive, all these things. But from the morning, I was focusing on that show. And hopefully, to me, I'm sure you'd agree again, preparation is massive. However much you think you need to practice to make sure you're match fit and ready, do a bit more. Because when the spotlight hits you, like whether it's real or figuratively, things can kind of get scrambled and go out the window, and all those things you practiced can get lost, and you can suddenly realize you don't know if that's verse 1 or verse 2, and if your solo's coming up or if you've got another 24 bars. Mm-hmm. We've all been there, and I still get it. After 40 odd years or whatever, I still get those moments of panic, especially when the guy's singing in Japanese, so you're not quite sure if the middle eight is coming up or not. So be even more prepared. Do that extra bit. Sometimes you can't, but if you can, then do that. And then physically, and I use this I work as a musical director sometimes, as I'm sure you know, and I'll do this with very nervous artists, which is good because it calms me down too. I'll go into the dressing room and say, okay, we're just going to breathe. Kind of slow that breathing down. We're going to take it lower, take it deeper in through the nose. I'm going to roll the shoulders. I'm going to stretch up. And even doing it in front of you now, I'm feeling calmer.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's like, it's like magic, isn't it? They curl down. If it's the kids, I say, right, we're going to swing like baby gorillas, and all those things can really help. I have a thing called the Zen brush. It's my secret tool, and it's nothing radical. It's just like an advanced version of that. My Zen brush sweeps me from the crown of my head all down. It's looking for trapped energy and things that are hunched that you can let go. Everywhere, from your eyebrows to your forehead to your jaw is a magnet for tension, as you know, and especially with us lot, your arms and your hands, but even your legs and your feet. Let it go, let it go, let it go.
So you're actually like visualizing down through your body and relaxing yourself. Yeah, exactly. I love it.
It's my secret tool. Well, it's not a secret because I share it with all the students. And it's great for, if you're wound up driving, same thing. It's a beautiful thing, and a bit of breathing. So there's all that. And then, you spoke about you used the phrase, the inner game of what we do. And it's massive. We've got, and those people, I hear it so many times, I can't believe how nervous I am. I've presented to hundreds of people at conferences, I've done but it's a different thing as performers. It's a different thing. So that monkey on the shoulder's going, hey mate, you're not really good enough for this. You shouldn't really be here. They're probably thinking about replacing you. You're going to slip on a bullet. All those things, like that monkey. So, so I counteract that. I say, what's the worst that can happen? Nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to get hurt. 3 hours time, you'll be having a quick beer and everything will have been all right. There is a reason why you're here. They must think you're all right. So I got the other voice going.
Okay.
And those butterflies and that nervousness, you can kind of decide, or I can, or I think it's possible, you can say, you can either take that in a negative way, so it really makes you feel sick and think, oh God, I wish I hadn't taken this gig. Or you can go, yeah, it is exciting. How lucky am I to be in Tokyo? Flipping it, I'm going to make the best of this, Breathe again and smiling. I'm sure you say this to students when you get out on the gig, everybody's in it together, smile to people, like just with your eyes if you've got the saxophone in your gob. Like it's like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Nobody wants you to slip. People want to make the performance great. And the audience too, they're not, you might occasionally, once in a blue moon, get somebody who's dying for you to screw up. But usually, everybody wants to get their 20 quid's worth and have a lovely night, and see you do your best. So it's those mental things that you can turn it around. And if there's nobody to smile at, I'll just have a little smile to myself. It sounds ridiculous, but I'll go, you are a lucky dog, you're in Yokohama, man. How many of your mates have been to Yokohama and had their flight paid for?
Yeah.
Or I'm down the 606 Club, and I'm thinking, this is what I always dreamt of, being in the, playing in a beautiful club with people listening to me. Or, our students, I've got this opportunity to play for the other students. No, I'm not gonna run to the toilet and be sick. I'm gonna go, okay, I'm just gonna do my best, let it go.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's quite fascinating to hear you talk about that, that you are thinking through all these processes as you prepare for doing these massive gigs when you've been doing it like your whole adult life. And it's a great reminder for people who are just at the start of their journey, maybe thinking about doing that first gig. Because, hey, maybe you can remember that feeling way back when you did your first open mic thing or your first jam session. It's terrifying, right? The same processes can apply for that first gig as even when you've been doing it forever, and now that's just part of your mental routine, I suppose, of preparing for a show. I love that, Snake. That's absolutely fantastic. And so what about then from a sort of technical point of view with regards to your playing? Because I imagine that's a real challenge as well. You mentioned before about you might be traveling to the gig. But also you mentioned about, you might be waiting around for 3/4 of the gig to actually go on and do your bit.
Yeah.
So do you have a process that you do in your playing to prepare when you're doing larger shows like this?
Yep. Once again, a really great question. And, when we're on the road, we're almost always touring when we're doing these big gigs, and the situation is so often far from ideal as far as having time and space to practice goes. And on a good day, if we're already in the city when we're playing, then I'll head for the venue late morning, well in advance of the other musicians, if that's practical, and do my usual thing, get 2 or 3 hours in on sax and shakuhachi, my normal long tones and scales and studies, and then review the material that I'm going to play on that evening, well in advance, so I can then go for a walk or a jog and have something to eat. That's an ideal day, but of course, many days when we're traveling are not ideal. So then the strategies come in. I am desperate to have had some kind of a warm-up that day. I'm sure you're the same, but all of us, we hate going on cold. That's a nasty thing. So long days on tour buses or flights and airports. Sometimes you can't go to the venue early because it's flipping 30 kilometers down the road. So ingenuity is required. And even if that means some mouthpiece only practice in the corner of the airport car park or the motorway services, I've done it. In the hotel, sometimes I'll climb into the wardrobe, taking duvets and pillows with me, and do some real super quiet practice, which is a good for us anyway, to practice quietly. I'm always telling people to hit the extremes. I'm sure you are. And I've practiced under bridges. I've practiced in broom cupboards, motorway car parks, toilets, storerooms. It's always a bit of a joke, where's Snake? Oh, he's in a broom cupboard somewhere. I can hear him.
Okay.
And then on the show, that potential frustration of not being used that much. I'm in the wings and I'm just improvising quietly along to whatever that they're doing on the stage.
Okay.
And I have a friend of a friend who does the Doobie Brothers, and I know he's exactly the same. So he's more of a jazz player than me. So he's playing crazy bebop to Long Train Running or whatever, backstage.
I did a few sessions with Andy Snitzer, who he did like
Waiting for a Star to Fall.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was talking about being on tour with so many big Paul Simon. Yeah, I think he's been doing Billy Joel and all these sorts of people. And it's funny, he said exactly the same thing about you that you said about only doing a few numbers in the show.
Yeah.
And he also said the same thing about he'd be underneath the stage, blowing over, because no one can hear about the front because it's like a million decibels out there, but doing the same thing. So yeah, that's fascinating. And so if you are in a really tight situation and you haven't got that very much time to prepare, like what are the absolute minimum go-to things that you would do before you went out on stage?
Okay, so absolute minimum for me is, calm, focused, long tones with some dynamics, long tones in octaves, and maybe, and control, stamina, endurance type drills that are warming the muscles up. The same as I'm sure we both encourage all our students to start every practice session with long tones and those kind of things that are warming the muscles up and working on our control and tone and building up the stamina. And I'm not really bothered if I don't get as far as any finger waggling things, but in addition to that, if I've got tricky things that are in the memory that I've got to play that evening, I'll try and have played those, super slow, speed them up a bit, get them up to match speed. So that would be my minimum, and that might, you could do that hopefully in 20 minutes if you had to, So that would be hopefully my minimum. I never get
love it.
less than that,
Yeah, I mean that's in a difficult situation. Really encouraging though for anyone listening who is just at that early stage of starting to do shows like this. We're all still doing warm-ups. We're all still working on the same things.
It's a lifelong thing.
It's a lifelong thing. It's part of the journey. One of the other things I wanted to ask you, and I really appreciate you taking the time because I think it's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
The last thing I want to just get some thoughts from you on is I love the whole talk about the mindset, about how you're preparing yourself the whole day as you're going to do the show. Also the practical aspect of preparing your skills for going and being on top form for going and doing that show too. But I'm curious, I mean, you've had such a fabulously successful career. Do you think that whole mindset and preparation attitude also extends to the way that you approach building a career, making contacts, and the whole aspect? Because there's a whole other side of being a working musician, which is the business side of it, right? The connections and how you present yourself and all that sort of thing. So do you think that same mindset flows from the performing aspect to the actual businessy side of things?
Yeah, great question. And it's such a huge part of what we do as musicians. And really, I make no divisions or differentials between those of us who are just doing it safe for fun. We have no ambition or necessity to earn money from it. And those of us who are professional or semi-professional, it's all the same. We're all on our saxes, wanting to get better, wanting to get more gigs, wanting to meet more musicians. So this really, I think, applies to everybody. I always want to get people out of their bedrooms and in front of an audience. And so, I'll ask the question to players who are earlier on in their careers and to my former self, where do you want to be? What's your dream situation, your dream playing situation? And whether it's a professional thing or not. And then, okay, make a plan. What do I need to do to get there? And then for me, my ambition was pretty simple from early on when I met that saxophone. Like, I want to get really good on this instrument and be in a band and play live. That was my ultimate dream and my ambition. And others might have aspire to be studio musicians or to do those big gigs that we've been talking about. Well, like my son, his dream is doing the sax and DJ thing, not necessarily for money. So I had no aspiration to any of that, and I kind of just fell into it, happy accidents, and then found out that I enjoyed it, and it was sometimes lucrative. But whatever it is, have a plan, work your way towards it, be patient, because it takes a lot longer than you think so many times. And I think it's good to be ambitious and to have these ideas and these goals, and to, I'm sure once again, Nigel, we're the same, and you'll hear students say, yeah, but I could never do that. I could never do what Nigel does or what Snake does. So don't ever say that. You don't impose limitations. Just get rid of that monkey again, saying I'll never be good enough. No, dismiss that. Do what you can. And mindset and that thing. How do you get gigs like that? Well, practice. No. But then my best advice is, the way I understand and the way it happened for me, is practice hard with great guidance from somebody like yourself or myself. Get yourself out playing as soon as you can. When you feel you're ready, you'll know when you're ready. And on the gig, make sure that you're helpful, you're positive, you're on time, you're hardworking, you support your fellow musicians, you get the first round of drinks in, and then more on the business side, like you said, your online presence. These days, in the old days, it was have a good CV and some pictures.
Yeah.
Now it's have a strong online presence. And most of us Westerners, or British people, Australian people, we're naturally shy. We're not show-offs, but you've got to show off a bit. You've got to show your strengths in your online presence. If you're not capable of sorting that out, get a friend or pay for somebody to do it. And then within reason, just take every playing opportunity that comes along, whether it's any money involved or not, because that's the most natural way for me for a career to grow, is for you to do a good job, you get recommended, you make friends with another musician or two, and it rolls on, and suddenly the phone rings. Why are you calling me? How'd you get? Oh, so-and-so said that they were on a gig with you in Manchester a couple of months ago, and you were great. And Oh, oh, lovely. Okay, yeah, I can do that. As opposed to, that's like the natural, organic way, and that's how it happened for me. And I'm not saying that cold calling and pushing and approaching people out the blue is a bad thing to do. Not necessarily. I once wrote to Paul Weller from the Jam saying, "Oh, I'd love to be in your band." And that was a handwritten letter. I got a handwritten letter back saying, "I don't need a sax player, but thanks for the letter."
Oh, that's nice.
And it, I never have called artist managers or anything like that, but some people would do it. I'm not saying that's not a bad thing to do, and maybe if that works, great. I knew somebody who, they were up and coming artist, songwriter, and they wrote to George Martin, who produced the Beatles. I said, "Oh, Mal, I'd love to work with you." And he said, "Fine, come on down."
Wow.
I think that's the exception. Most of us are used to getting no replies or rejections. But
yeah, I think that thing you said, though, about taking every opportunity to go play and also being a nice person that's actually easy to get along with and do, obviously, without a doubt, you got to have your skills together. But it's about making connections. The music business is a connections business. Yeah. We all know.
Yeah, definitely.
You need to know people. And if you don't know people yet, the way you start that process is by taking those opportunities and going and playing. And it's always amazed me throughout my life how people connect you to people. And if I think about every big thing that I've done, it always tracks back through some random long string of connections. So every connection is important. And
same
about getting started.
For me.
Yeah,
every one of those big gigs, I could trace it back to a session or a gig or a friend of a friend, and that's how it happened.
Go on then. Tell us how the Eikichi Yazawa gig came about 25 years ago.
Okay, well, I mean that's a good example, and I was phoned not by him, but by one of his people, and I had no idea why I was, how this came about until after I'd done the gig or on the gig, but I had done just what we call a demo session when people have typically a producer or a singer-songwriter will have written a song and they just want to do a demo version of it, a trial version. So, for £100 or as a favour, I popped down to this guy's house in West London, played on a couple of tracks for a singer that he was writing for, said goodbye. That's the only time I ever met him, and he'd called me because somebody else had recommended me to him. And then he, unbeknown to me, had been writing with Yazawa. He'd come over to London to write with this guy. And then he said, I need to, I want to get a hot guy maybe from the UK on sax. And he go, get the old Snake. So I gave him my number. But I never found that out until months afterwards.
Wow.
So it's pretty random, but it's a good example of what we were talking about.
Yeah, but if you trace that back though from there, the reason that you went and played for that guy doing those that session for £100 was because he knew who you were, because you built up a relationship that led to that point. So
there you go.
I love that. Such great advice. Look, Snake, honestly, such a great conversation today, and there's so many takeaways in there that I think will help anyone listening, wherever you're at, whether you're just getting started or whether you're like way further on in your sort of journey with saxophone. There's stuff that you could take away from today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us, Snake. And I mentioned to you, we were talking before we started recording, how I love that you actually don't live so far away from me, right? You're up York somewhere, aren't you?
I was up that way. Now I'm over in East Lincolnshire, Northeast Lincolnshire, but it's not that far from you. Still
not that far from me. So we're within not far away from each other. And so our students do cross paths, and I'm always hearing great stories about what you're doing. People going to your gigs, and so if you're in the UK, definitely go and check out Snake if you can see him live, and also use Snake Academy, where you're helping students. A bunch of our students also do things with you or go along to your saxophone retreats, and they're always telling me how awesome it is. So
down in southern Spain, they're a joy.
I think I'd like to come. Sounds fun.
Come on, man. Come on.
There you go. So
2 tutors.
There you go. So if you want to find out more about Snake, then go check him out. Snakedavis.rocks. Is that the best place?
Yeah, that's the best place. There's links to all the things you mentioned there. So
Yeah, brilliant.
The Snake Academy and the horn camps, we call them.
Horn camps. Oh, awesome. Well, we'll pop all the links in the show notes. So thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And if you're watching this and you want to dig in further, then you can go check out the full transcription from today's show. That's going to be over at saxschoolonline.com/podcast. Hey, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. So many great takeaways in there. If you'd like to check out the transcription, you can find that over at saxschoolonline.com/podcast. Also, all the links are in there where you can check out Snake Davis and even go and grab that 14-day trial for Sax School and see how we're helping people here. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.